450,000 people came by yesterday. And there were people who stopped to hear what we were talking about. And here's the really neat thing. When the cherry blossoms are in bloom in Washington, D.C., the Parks Department, the Park Service, does not give out permits. Because they don't want anybody blocking entrances or doing any activity, because they want people to be there to enjoy the cherry blossoms. We were the only group, the JustGod.Today, granted permission from the Park Service to be right outside the Martin Luther King Memorial entrance and have a service and preach God's word and have people singing and worshiping and reading from the word. We were it. So it was a pretty cool thing. And this is just another look from right at the corner, looking into the memorial as you walk into. And here's one of the quotes, and I'll read it for you. And this was written in Alabama in 1947. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And so there are quotes and statements like that all along the world when you walk in. And it's breathtaking to see. And there's the memorial itself. I would highlight and recommend, if you can go, it's worth your time to see it. There's also a gift shop and an area of information about the memorial. And that is based upon the fact, if you remember, the last words of Martin Luther King, the last sermon he preached was the mountaintop speech. So the whole imagery is that he's coming out of the mountain, coming out of the foundational elements of his push for civil rights. However, what we pushed yesterday was this idea. What was the most important right that Martin Luther King pushed? Biblical rights. You realize that Martin Luther King is one of the most Bible-quoting preachers known in America? You realize you can compare some of Billy Graham's messages to Martin Luther King's? Sometimes there was more scripture in Martin Luther King's. One of the college classes I took, we had to examine all the sermons of different people and figure out who was more scriptural, who used more scripture, how they preach, how they do it. But once again, Martin Luther King had a whole lot of things to say about from the Word. And you know what? Anybody got any heroes that you just love and you support, but you forget they're human? I guarantee you Martin Luther King had his flaws. We know that. But how many of you have no flaws? Any Peters out there? Anybody here ever denied Christ? How about Noah? Noah had a problem with drink, and got his kids in trouble. What about David? Would any of you trust your wives around David? So all of us, and believe me, I've got plenty of flaws and scars you can't see and don't know about or think about, but I'm human like you, and I have to pray and say, God, keep me pure, keep me going straight and strong. But it was just an incredible place to be. And I was thankful for the opportunity, and I appreciate you folks praying for me on the different things I've done. I have no more planned excursions as of right now. But I'm just thankful for what God is doing in Washington, D.C. And I'm thankful that I wasn't trying to do the Capitol on Friday afternoon. But that's just me. Hey, this morning, I was going to do an illustrated message, had things ready, and then I hit Reagan Airport. And the minute I walked out of the airport, it was like all of the pollen in the air concentrated into a bullet and it was flying at my nose. And it exploded inside of my head. And I've had a headache. I still have a slight headache. I've had a headache since Friday when I got there. I got an allergy shot last Friday, last Monday when I left. Had 2 negative tests at the hospital to fly into Reagan and go around some places we were at. But I kept thinking, I want to pull this off, And by the time I got in last night, got home about 8:30 or 9 o'clock, I thought I can't pull this off. So I'm going to do my best to get those messages coming. And I am planning, I already have this laid out. I'm planning an illustrated series on the miracles of the book of Exodus next. And I'm going to be talking to some of you that are good with your hands and construction. I need some electrical minds. I need some people with construction skill sets, because my goal is you're going to walk through the Red Sea. I'm serious. And my goal is you're going to see the burning bush. You're going to think that's real. I walked through the Bible Museum and went on the Old Testament experience, and I came back. I was just being encouraged. Lord, how can we do this? How can we make this happen and show this thing? So that's the heart. But I want to share a message called Famous Last Words. General John Sedgwick said these words: "They couldn't hit an elephant from that distance." He said that to his men who were ducking from the fire of the Confederate sniper. You want to figure out how that went? Salvador Dali said, "I do not believe in my own death." And yet, he died. This was really interesting. Erskine Challow. You ever heard that name? He spoke these words to his firing squad. He said, "Take a step forward, lads. It will be easier that way." Wow! P.T. Barnum. Anybody know what his last words were? To his wife: "Nancy, I want you to know that my last thoughts are of you." My wife may remember this, but several years ago, we were back in Indiana, probably 25, 26 years ago. There was a businessman in our community area there, near where I grew up, and he got into some real serious financial issues and was going to have his insurance taken out on himself because he had planned for someone to show up at his office and kill him and make it look like an accident or a robbery. I remember the board meeting where one of our board members, Dave Stark, said, "Can you imagine walking into a business knowing the last time you open that door and close that door, and when you turn around, you're going to take your last breath and have your last thought?" That was wild. All that stuff with the court system, and it was a big mess for a while. And Paul the Apostle had some last words. He said this in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the course. I have kept the faith. And in the future there is reserved for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only me, but also to all those who have loved his appearing." And purpose as before, but tell me, what is a good fight? Anybody here ever had a good fight? I know people that said, well, what happened in court was good. Was it a fight? You wish you had to go through all that? I've done some competition in martial arts and stuff years ago, and I can tell you what, a good fight means you don't get bruised, it means you don't get hit. Most of the time, that one punch knocks someone out and that's it, doesn't usually happen that way. So when you think about the good fight, what's a good fight look like? Well, maybe that means a win without getting hit or bruised or tired. Maybe it means not being broken the next day by being racked with pain. I'm learning the older I get that this is a common frame of reference for me in the morning. Can anybody relate? You wake up and you're like, who beat me to death in my sleep? Who hit me with rocks or something? Or maybe it's the pride of not getting hit at all, or not getting hit as much as you expected. Good fight. What if Rosa Parks said, I don't need to sit there? What if Isaac Newton had said, I'm going to cut that tree down because those trees keep hitting me on the head? Do you realize that Thomas Edison tried 9,000 plus experiments to get a storage battery to work? I think by 115 I'd be saying, I'm going to do something else. You know, it was just 3 years ago that some individual or company came out and had more patents than Thomas Edison. Took over 100 years, 150 years almost for those things to happen with people we ever think. What if they had said, failures in the kingdom? What if Martin Luther King had never had his I Have a Dream speech? How many countries, how many governments would not be the kind of government they are today unless someone had stood up and said no? Aren't you thankful for people like Corrie ten Boom, who, although they were in the fire, said, I'm not going to give my faith up. I'm going to fight the good fight. I've told you folks the story of Lockout. There's a in that death camp, there was one of the bunkers that you walk out, and the very bottom, right before you walked out the door, someone had taken their thumbnail and carved a cross in the cement. Carved a cross in the cement. Although they knew they were dead, or as good as dead, because of the leadership there in that camp. The Dachau was nothing more than a death camp. But the people who walked out, they would tap their foot on that cross before they walked out, because it gave them some hope and it gave them some faith. We have acknowledgement there were people who committed their life to Christ in the Holocaust camps because people shared Jesus with them. That's the good fight. When things are going hard about you should keep fighting. Paul had called believers to those who would jail them. He even delivered them to death without number. He even held the cloaks of those who stoned Stephen. And I really believe that God brought back to Paul's mind what he had done when he held those cloaks and watched Stephen die. Especially when he saw Stephen say, I see Jesus standing at the right hand of the Father. Stephen fought the good fight. 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 27. And far more laborers, and far more imprisonments, beaten times without number, often in danger of death. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 lashes. 5 times he was beaten. Almost 200 lashes. Just like we saw Jesus in the Passion. 5 times I received 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. The night and the day, and I've been adrift at sea. Anybody want to compete with this? I've been on frequent journeys in dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my countrymen, dangers from the Gentiles. I'm going to put in there, dangers in the capital, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers at sea. Everywhere Paul went, there was something coming against him. And yet he said, I fought the good fight. I've been in labor, hardship through many sleepless nights, and hunger, thirst, often without food and cold and exposure. Apart from such external things, there's the daily pressure of me of concern for all the churches. Now, when they're trying to kill me out there, I got to take care of the churches. Think of the fight that Paul was dealing with. There was a gentleman on one of the flights sitting right beside me. And if you're going to fly anytime soon, realize that things are normal there. People everywhere, people right beside you. It's crazy. There was a guy, and he had a notebook in German. He was wearing a nice suit, nice tie. He was an older guy, 75, and I said, "What kind of shoes you got?" Let's start the conversation, because the older I get, the more my feet hurt, and I want comfortable shoes. And I've been standing in these black red shoes at the memorial all morning long. And my feet were screaming, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you, Lady Coverstone? Do something." So I said, "Sir, I'm only 52. Can you tell me what kind of shoes are?" Because they look comfortable. He said, "Oh man, they are." Worked at a Catholic university. He was journaling what he did every day. He said, "I'm keeping track of what I do every day. So when my family gets bored in the future, they come back and see where I went, what I was doing, and who I talked to, and who I met with." And it was just a daily journal. Start talking about faith. Well, we're seeing a lot of attacks on the church. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of things happen. And he said a lot of people are just backing away. They're afraid to stand up. They're afraid to say anything. He says, "You know what they're afraid to do?" He said, "They're afraid to fight the good fight." I said, "Sir, let's talk about that this morning." And, we talked about that. But think about the stuff that Paul went through, and it never stopped him. It never froze him. It never put him in his place. He just basically said, "Okay, this is what it is." So that's what the good fight looks like. When you are battled and have battled the enemy, but you stayed true to Jesus and you've held your ground. And you're going to find in your faith and in your life, there will be moments when the enemy comes against you like an absolute flood. To push and to push and to push. And if you haven't realized already, that's the times in which we live right now. He's going to push it as hard as he can. And that's why there's a great falling away. Look at this run of gold. We see that. That was the fight part. But then he said the course part. I have finished the course, and that means he passed the test. 2 Corinthians 13, 4 through 5. For indeed he was crucified because of weakness, yet he lives because of the power of God. For we too are weak in him, yet we will live with him because of the power of God directed towards you. Test yourself to see if you are in the faith. Test yourself, examine yourself, he says. Or do you not recognize this about yourselves? That Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test. And every day there's opportunities and challenges and tests in your life to keep your faith, to walk it out, to live it, and to do what you're supposed to do. I also saw this on the flight yesterday. Coming from Washington to Nashville. There was a guy sitting beside me in the window. I had one of the few middle seats empty, which is nice, but nonetheless. His family was sitting in front of him, and we were getting ready to take off, and of course, there goes back the seat back, okay? And all you folks know, what are you not supposed to do right before takeoff with your seat? Put it back. And the guy, the person beside me said, I'll just push up on him, and that way when he comes by, I'll just look back. Well, I was kind of glad the stewardess was like, ma'am, he needs to come out. Oh, what's that? No, it's not your husband's holding him. Okay, see, we get this. In other words, she passed her test. If she didn't pass the test, she failed it. She was thinking, I can try and get by. And we in the church world have this idea, what can we get by? How close to the edge can I get? I want to be as far back from the edge as possible. Especially when there's nothing down there to catch me or catch my fall. Paul passed because he stayed faithful. He did all the assignments. He did his best on each one. And because he'd been sent to the Gentiles, he had to swallow his pride as a Pharisee. Remember Ananias, he said, Paul, the Lord is going to show you how much harm you have to go through, how much pain you have to deal with because it's called your life. That's what Paul dealt with. Paul knew when he went out and preached, they weren't going to respect him because of this or that. Not enough of us live like that in front of the watching world because we're in a fishbowl. And everything you do, every word you say, every step you take is sometimes questioned. And it was interesting yesterday to see people come and what are you guys doing? What are you here for? What's that sign about? What's this JustGod.Today? What are you? Who are you with? What church are you with? We're able to say, we're not a church. We're denomination fellowships coming together. Because the whole idea was no brands, no labels. Just Jesus. Just Jesus. That was it. And so people are saying, well, what agency are you with? Well, not an agency. Well, what fellowship are you? I said, well, I'm the Assembly of God pastor, but these folks here are, Methodists, and you got some Pentecostal folks here, you got some Baptists here, you got some Black Baptist churches, some White Baptist churches. We're all here together. Well, why? Because there's a thing called unity in the Bible we're trying to push and enforce and get the word out and those sort of things. So people are watching us because they want to know what we're about, what we're doing. Paul wanted to make sure he passed the test. And none, I can't say enough. So, not as many of us that are supposed to are living that kind of life. I can't say get it either. Anyway, Philippians 4:9 says this, and I think this is the scariest verse in the Bible. As for the things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things and the God of peace will be with you. You know why Paul was able to say, if you've heard me say it, you can say it. And if you've seen me do it, you can do it. If you see me going to that movie theater, you can go and watch that movie. If you see me read that book, you can do it. He basically said that because he passed the test. He said, God, should I do this or should I not? Should I go here or should I go there? There's a good thing about what James says to us. James said, don't say tomorrow, I'm going to go here, do this, and do that. He said, you should say, God, what should I do tomorrow? Should I go here? Should I do this? Should I do that? You pray and ask the Lord to show you and guide you, because that's part of passing the test. Because the test isn't just at the end of your life, the test is at the end of every day. Did I serve him today like I should have? Did I say what I was supposed to say? Did I witness to that person like I was supposed to witness to? Should I talk to that person sitting beside me on the plane? And I was thankful that a conversation about shoes led to the fact that the man was a Christian, knew who the Lord was, and gave us a chance to encourage one another. But you never know what that comment may bring. Even going through the line at Walmart. How's your day? How you doing this morning? You might not have any idea what you're going to hear from those people. But they need someone who's Christ-like, who has the presence of God around them to walk through that and change their lives. So a few weeks ago, I was walking through Walmart. At the shop, I was going to get my stuff out, bringing the buggy out, and said, how are you today? She said, well, customers have been lousy. And I said to her, I won't be. Kind of brought a little smile to her face. She has dogs, and she knows about my dogs, and we talk back and forth from time to time. Don't know her name, just know she's there. And I just began to talk to her about my day and what was going on, and what I was going to do in the afternoon, and just trying to be polite. I didn't say anything about God or Jesus or the Bible or, hey, where do you go to church? It was just, I'm just talking about life. And she said, "Sir, I really appreciate you being kind to me." I said, "Well, the Bible says kindness is important." So, did it plant a seed? Maybe, maybe not. But if nothing else, she was smiling when I left and she was frowning when I got there. So even just going through a shopping lane can make a difference in somebody's life, because you have no idea what the customer, right before you walked up to pay, has done or said. And I don't know about you, but folks are grumpy in Walmart. And they have family reunions in the cereal aisle. You can't get through. Talk about people walking through airports, but that's another message. So we talked about the fight part, the chorus part. Now we're talking about the faith part. He said, "I've kept the faith." 1 Corinthians 4:16-18, Paul says, "Therefore we do not lose heart, but through our outer person is decaying, yet our inner person is being renewed day by day." So get this, you're dying, but yet you're gaining. That's a spiritual truth. Even though you may be getting physically weaker, or this is going on, God still has got your mind and hold of you, and the inner man is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction. You heard the list I read of you, what Paul gone through, right? Would you call that momentary light affliction? Imprisonment, shipwreck, exposure, cold, hungry, in prison? Would you say, that's light affliction? I drove in traffic yesterday in Washington, D.C. That was not light affliction. Okay? But that's what Paul says. Well, because for our momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Well, we look not at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. He basically said, I have kept my faith, and there's something beyond this life. There's something beyond who I am and what I've done and where I've been. There's something beyond when I plant that seed in somebody's life and invest in them. And Paul was writing those words to Timothy. I fought the good fight. All those things. He wrote those words to Timothy. Why? Because he knew he was not going to be around much longer. Those were the last words that Paul wrote. Because he knew he was going to be dying soon. Some people believe less than 2 months of time he wrote those words that Paul was taken out and beheaded. And something even quicker. All because of preaching the gospel, all because of his stand, all because of his heart for the Lord. So you see, the fights and difficulties had not withered his trust in the Almighty God. His faith remained strong and untarnished. It was pure and growing daily. Even though the man was sitting in prison when he wrote those words, probably hoping to be able to get a breath of fresh air. Could you imagine being able to be unchained, unshackled, for 20 minutes or half a day, and just walk outside beyond the prison walls in which you're part? So when I pray for Jeff, I pray for Jeff every day. I pray God help him to not just be content, but to understand that you've got him there for a reason and a purpose. And even though he is constrained and restrained, Lord, I pray the Holy Spirit can work in him and through him to make a difference. And I hear good things about what's happening in Jeff's life there in prison. God's using him. God's making a difference. And not just because he's a model prisoner. But because he went in with the heart of God, I serve you. I don't understand this, but I'm here. And I'm going to trust you. How would we do in that situation? You see, so often, all we see is the fight and the frustrations and the difficulties and the bad stuff and the bad things. But the one thing that mattered to Paul was his walk with Jesus Christ, and that the world would see it daily. Every day, whether it was in prison or on the road to a church or helping to build the church or working on the tents to make money so he could be the pastor he's going to be and help that church grow. When he's discipling men like Timothy and Titus or other young men, no matter what it was, he realized, I've got to live this out so people see it. And people have got to see my faith. So when he preached among the idols, he spoke to the demons that confronted him. Or he challenged Peter. Imagine being the new guy on the block. Hey, Peter, why do you act one way with these people, but this way with another people? What's that all about? And you're that former Pharisee that tried to haul people off to jail and get them killed. No matter how he did not lean on his tribe or his legacy as a Pharisee. Go look at Philippians, he said, I'm the tribe of Benjamin, I'm a Pharisee, circumcised on the 8th day. He said, I followed the law. I was a very, very good student when it came to following the law. But, I put no faith in those things. I put no faith in the color of my skin. I put no faith in the degrees that I have, the education I have. I put no faith in what's in my wallet. Although I do appreciate that testimony, man. Now look, if you just give to get dinner on Sunday night, we can talk. Okay? Understand that. Some people are so good at getting that. All right? That was a joke. I was kidding. But understand. What's in my wallet matters not to God. But sometimes we take pride in who we are, what we are, where we came from, this and that. And I'm going to be real honest about someone. I hear somebody say, you have to walk a mile in my shoes. That's an impossible thing to do. Anybody. That phrase really kind of drives me nuts from time to time because you can't do it. You got to walk in my shoes. Well, I can't. First of all, your shoes won't fit me. Second of all, I don't know anything about your life experiences or what you've done or you've gone. I had a woman say that to me one time, and I said, well, I wear heels. What do you mean? You can't do that. You just can't walk in somebody else's shoes. I can't live your experience, and you can't live mine. But what matters is my experience glorifies Christ, and you're supposed to do. And sometimes when we say that phrase, you got to walk in my shoes, what we're saying is, I've not really had the faith in God I need to have. It's awful quiet in here. But am I right? Because the Bible tells me I'm supposed to walk by faith. Faith in Him. No matter what happens, what comes. I remember the moment the doctor came in and said, Mr. Coverstone, you are type 1 diabetic, I'm going to give you some shots. And those nurses came in with 2 100cc syringes and went. And 4 days later, I was still sitting over 1,000. So they were coming in every day and giving insulin and shots and this and that. And I remember that doctor saying, you're probably going to be blind by the time you're 30 or 40. Forget about having kids. You're going to die and all these other things. And I told the story. There was a nurse a male nurse that was in there, and when the doctor came in, the doctor came in, and he said, Pastor Anthony, you knew me from a church, he said, don't believe that doctor. I was pretty struck down at that moment. I was like, man, my life is over. My ministry is over. My future is over. Because this doctor just said this, and this, and that guy said, don't listen to what the doctor just said. You're a child of God. You're a pastor. You know the word. You don't have to believe what he said. Because I'll tell you what, after he said, I was like, I actually pulled hair. I had hair I could pull then, But I'm thankful that guy helped encourage me in my faith to trust the Lord. But there's even one more important thing that is important about Paul's words, his last words. It's 3 words. He said, in the future. Fought the good fight, finished the course, kept the faith, in the future. Those of you that have kids or grandkids, and you understand the very fate of getting older, and that one day there'll be a tombstone representing who and what you were, understand the importance of investing in your generations, right? And the generations to come. And we do that by loving them and nurturing them and teaching them and training them and helping them and giving them wisdom. And helping with money from time to time. And then when they're in difficult situations, saying, hey, my door's open. Come back anytime, talk with me, I'll help you this and that. But we do that because we care about what comes after us. And that was Paul's heart. Paul said, I fought the good fight, finished the course, kept the faith. Because in the future, there's something that God wants to do through what I've done here and now. And your influence, and your prayers, and the things that you're doing right now in your life, your job, with your family, they will ring true decades from now, centuries from now. Every funeral I tell the story, I had a great-grandfather who liked to blow up outhouses with dynamite. So I got it honestly. That's all I'm going to say about that, because we have law enforcement present, okay? But nonetheless, Now, I never met that great-grandfather, but my grandma told me all about it. And although it may not have made a huge difference in my life, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, you know what an M80 is. You might as well have a stick of dynamite. And we did blow up a lot of things. Once again, I'm not going to say because we didn't blow up. Is there a statute of limitations on blowing stuff up? I hope. Anyway, for those back in Jasonville, I may have been involved, but I'm not going to talk about it. But nonetheless, my grandma told me that story, and somebody from those generations back passed that story on, not just so I could tell my kids or tell funeral people about that or tell the church. It was the point that something was so important to the family that they passed it down. What my dad told me about the time he went in Martin was a king. While my dad told me stories about business and finance and the mistakes he'd made. My dad had gone through a divorce. My mom and dad both been married, got divorced. They both had 2 sets of girls. They got divorced, married, had me and my brother. After my dad had his heart attack and stroke and became a Christian, he began to share with me mistakes he'd made in his marriage, mistakes he'd made in business. And why was he telling me those things? To make me feel bad? No, so that I could learn from them and not make those same mistakes. But when he told me about good things and how to do this and that, I learned a lot of things from him that I shared with my own kids. They don't realize. I didn't say, Mike, you need to listen to this because my dad taught me this. So often we just share those nuggets of truth and practical living so that people can understand. What do you invest in your kids? House in Terre Haute we lived in had a basement. And that basement was underneath all the bedrooms. And I'd get up early, go downstairs, and I would pray above me. I knew my prayer went from heavens, and I would say, Lord, I'm praying for my kids. I'm going to remind you back to the bedroom right now. I prayed for him. I prayed for all the kids, the person they're going to marry. I prayed for their college background. I prayed for them to have peace. I prayed for them to be physically healthy. I prayed for them to be able to make good money men, good decisions, and things like that. I would pray, I would walk back and forth underneath in that basement area and know I was praying for my wife and my kids above me. That's why every day I get to stand as practice. I pray for Jennifer, I pray for the kids, I pray for him now. She's in that list too, you know. And maybe 15, 20 minutes a day, but I make sure I do every single day. Why? Because I want to invest in them. Whether I say it to him or I say it to God, I want those things to be invested in. And that's what Paul was doing. He said, in the future there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness. So his life and his focus wasn't just on what he had then. He looked beyond his own life to the future of others. And that's why that I have a dream speech. You realize that Martin Luther King made the statement, I may not get there with you. I may not get there with you. Think about how many people are going to die today. United States of America, about 7,741 people are going to die today. Some of them probably knew it was coming. Some of them didn't see the truck. Some of them didn't know they had cancer. Hearing more and more stories from 2020 of folks that didn't go and do their normal doctoring, their normal things, and then come back later on. The doctor's like, you're in stage 4 cancer. In fact, if you look at some of the reports, you'll find a lot of people have found themselves already in stage 3, stage 4 cancer, and didn't even know they had it. Because we were so scared to go to doctors last year. You say those things, you want to talk about it. So we don't know what's going to happen next. That means that if today's my last day, how do I want to spend my last day? What are my famous last words to be? What are the things that are important? Many presidents, congressmen, senators have dreamed for this country, had plans, had thoughts. Many business leaders have dreamed of a product to change the world. In 1993, something became available to every American that we never had before, and we can't live without now. You know what it was? Internet. Anybody realize the first iPhone was distributed around 2008? And how much has it changed our world? I didn't need a boarding pass yesterday. I had my boarding pass on my phone. I remember a science teacher, electronics teacher back in high school, Mr. Borders, he said, you know what? I'm going to say some things you guys won't believe me, but one day you'll have a phone you carry in your hand like they had on Star Trek. We called him Mr. Star Trek. We should have called him, Captain, what was the captain's name in Star Trek? Kirk. I was waiting on you, Hugh. I knew you were a Star Trek guy. We called him Captain Kirk. He said, you're going to have a phone that you carry in your hand. You're going to plug it in and charge it. You'll be able to contact anybody in the world. You'll be able to go in. All the news will be out there. There'll be something one day where you can find news from around the world. You don't have to see it on TV. He said, matter of fact, your phone will be your TV. Your phone will become your movie theater. We're all thinking, yeah, okay, can we go to lunch? That sort of thing. But so many people saw these things that were coming. Why do you think Microsoft Office is so big today? Because somebody had a plan. What do you think Mac, I'm a Mac guy. So we can fight outside or behind the building afterwards. But I'm a Mac guy. Been using Mac. I had a Mac. I first had my Mac. It was a Pro. A Mac Pro. It was 8. I'm sorry. A little more about this big and that wide. 1989, I paid like $2,000 for it. And now I look online and realize that those things are like worth a whole lot of money if you still have them and this and that. Had a Timex Sinclair 1000 computer, bought it at Service Merchandise. You ever remember that store? I paid $150 and had a 64K RAM pack, and I quote for you, Bill Gates said no one will ever need more than a 64K RAM. My computer's got a 2 terabyte drive, and I'm almost got it full of the stuff I'm working on. Because the world changes. But somebody saw those things. You ever been, as a parent, how many before the days of the picture of the baby inside the womb? You just had to wait. And then some of that, like 4 and 5 and 6 dimensional, you look at the picture, go, ah! It's like cutting out the paper to get you. Because everything has changed. People are having, heart surgeries, leaving the next day. In the 70s, they would have said, you better be here for a month or two, because we want to make sure you're safe and you're alive when you get out there. But a lot of us have shut our eyes and imagined things that were not really yet. All of us have done that. What will that baby look like? What will that child look like as they get older? Will I look like 5 years from now? How much hair will I have? What color will it be? All those sort of things. Paul did the same. He left his mark on men like Timothy and Titus because the dreams he had could not be finished in his lifetime. When I was about 5 years old, I found a book in my house that was under a cabinet. My sisters had taught me how to read. I was able to read pretty well before I got to kindergarten. And in this book, it was magical because it had a list of everything Mom got me and my brother for Christmas. I remember having my brother give me cookies or what time I was going to get, that sort of thing. Well, if you'll do this for me, I'll tell you. But I remember how magical, at 5 or 6 years old, you're like, this is pretty cool. But then when you go teenager, you're like, jeans and socks? Man, what's wrong with my mom? I'm 14 or 15, but I don't need jeans and socks. I want a video game. I want this. I want those sort of things that are going on. But how many of you ever you're excited about Christmas or Easter? And how many parents think about what they're going to dress their babies up for Easter? You think about that. We dream about those things, right? We dream, and I'm talking the dream cabinet. We dream about what it's going to look like, what the world's going to look like. You ever dreamed about what kind of car you're going to get? How you're going to do at the plate when you stand up there? Come on. All of us dream about those things. In the future, Paul says. There's a lot of pottery people who will make something from pottery. And I've had Seth Hart come here several times and actually throw clay on the pot as I was preaching. And you're in the secret place room back there. There are 2 pieces of pottery that he did for us right up here in front of you. And on the very bottom, there's a mark. And that mark indicates that Seth Hart made that piece of pottery. And Paul was saying, I want to leave my mark on men like Timothy and Titus. I want to leave my mark on my kids. So the generations from now, when we're talking about Grandpa or great-grandpa Dana, maybe some of the funny things I did or the funny things that I said, but I got to think about the future for that to happen. And you have to think about the future for that to happen in your life as well. Paul left his mark on men. He left his mark on the church and leaders so they could carry it out to the next generation. We have a maker who leaves his mark on us. I think at Sam's Club, they have this brand called Maker's Mark. Some of you might know, I think that's it. Maker's Mark. They stole that line. From the moment Adam and Eve were created, it was a mark on their life. When we accept Jesus Christ today, we begin to live our lives for Him. He puts that mark on us, and He says, "This one's mine." Kind of like the Toy Story, where the name Andy was written on the bottom of the shoe or the boot. And how did they know it was him, who it belonged to? It was Woody that showed him, right? Marked on his foot. It said Andy. Because God marks us. He marks us. No, we're going to go through the fight. No, we're going to go through the testing. No, we're going to go. Our faith is going to be challenged and become difficult at times. But the prayer today is this: may our markers, may the Maker's mark be evident in our lives, as it was in Paul's life. When he was asked what his reason was, Paul, how in the world can you just keep loving God and fighting all the things you fight? He could just say, just God. Paul, how in the world were you able to keep on that course and finish that course? Because there were some tests that you went through that were very difficult. How did you do it? How did you do it, Paul? He would say, just God. Paul, they tried to kill you. Can you look, when they would stone someone in the New and Old Testament, you know how they knew they were dead? Because they saw gray matter. They would dig a pit, put you in, and they would throw rocks at you. So I want you to imagine this. And the book of Acts it tells us he was in Lystra. He was preaching. They took him out and they stoned him and they walked away because they saw gray matter coming out of the skull. And Paul, suddenly touched by the hand of God, pushes off the rocks, crawls out of the pit, and hides. No, he goes back in the very same city where they had just stoned him. And when I get to heaven, there's several things I want to see in heaven. On the faculty room, I want to say, God, I want you to show me the look on the faces of those people when Paul walked back into town. Covered in blood and gray matter all over his face. He just walks right in. Hey, guys. We're going to talk about listening to a message after that. And I wonder if somebody said, how'd that happen? I think Paul would have said it was the resurrection power of Jesus Christ in my life. Let me tell you what He did for me. Matter of fact, go get your buddies who just tried to kill me and I'll tell them too. I can see Paul doing that. Why? Because Paul realized there was a future. And if they were going to stone him again, he wanted to make sure they knew who Jesus was. And why He raised him from the dead, literally. Why did you keep the faith in spite of all those difficulties, Paul? Just God. So today it has to be more than just dreams and visions and prophetic words and gifts and talents and abilities. We have to realize that Paul's good fight is our fight. Resurrection Sunday is more than just an event where we get dressed up and come to church. And I'm not knocking getting blessed up. I did my hair special today, as you can see. Are you fighting a good fight? Are you really living? Can people see Jesus in your decision-making skills? Can people see Jesus when you deal with difficulty and frustration and crazy things in your family and friends and things at school and work? And although I saw a whole lot of people yesterday, and there's all this desire about getting back to normal, which I don't think normal will ever exist again. Does anybody else feel like there's just something there's just something else going on that we don't see and don't know about that's just coming? Well, I hear that a lot every single day. People that pray with me, other situations. We just sense there's something going on. So what should we do about it? Well, first of all, we should live righteously, honestly. We should do our best to be Christ-like in everything we say and do. And when we fight the good fight, we literally, no matter what comes against, we keep getting back up. The Bible says the righteous man falls 7 times. What does he do? He keeps getting back up. You know what what that verse is really all about? It's about the fact that when you're a Christian, you're going to get hammered. You're going to get punched. You're going to get kicked. You're going to get thrown to the ground. And what are you supposed to do about it? Get back up. So keep fighting the good fight. Keep doing your best to pass the course. Keep doing your best to keep the faith. Realizing there's a future laid up for you. There's a crown of righteousness for you. But before you get there, there's something you have to invest and do in people's lives here today. So as you spend time with family and friends this afternoon, I want to encourage you to invest in that. Parents, tell your kids some of the stories about your life, your childhood. Let them know the kind of person you were. I went to college with a guy, and we were talking one time, and we were talking about our parents. We were on a circle, and he said, the question was, what does your family do? Well, my dad owned a paint store, hiring this and that. My mom worked at some retail places. And we had this one kid, he said, I don't know, my dad just never talks about what he did when he came home. Newspaper, I watched TV, we played ball, stuff like that, but I never knew what my dad did. We have any hobbies? Not with me, that sort of thing. I realized when I'm going to college, people are going to ministry, and they've not had anybody pouring into them. Even though my dad wasn't there a lot of times in my life because of the alcoholism, he was still there. He was still present. I learned a lot of those things in that time frame. But make sure you're telling your kids who you are, what you are, where you've been, what you've done, what God's done in your life. And share especially what God's done in you, where He brought you from. Don't be afraid to tell your kids the dumb things you did and the mistakes that you made. Right? Because, I know my father and my mother were not perfect, and I'm thankful for them. I'm glad my kids understand I'm not perfect. But let your kids know that the struggles that you had, the things that you faced. Let them sometimes parents aren't real. Let that soak in for a minute. Sometimes parents aren't real people to their kids. Only you're supposed to be your kids' best friends in the world. I don't think that at all. Because your kids need to know that you're real, that you're human. Sometimes you stay up all night praying because of the concerns you have for your kids and their situations. So that comes down to you. The last words that Jesus spoke were some of the most powerful. It is finished. What will yours be? What will be the last words you ever speak to your kids? Should the Lord tarry? Should something happen to you? And it's not a scary man. I'm just saying, what will your last words be? What will the people remember the last things you said to somebody about your faith in your life and who they were and who you were? Take these to heart today. Famous last words mean a lot. Let's pray. Father, I want to thank you once again for this Easter season, celebration of time and friendship and family that we have here today. And I'm going to ask you to remind us through Paul's words to continue to fight the good fight, no matter how hard it gets. Oh, that we would pass the test, whatever test you allow us to go through, as you would season us, you would bring patience and heart. And you, more than anything, God, would allow us just to be good students of your word, be an example of the test we face. Lord, I pray you help us to keep the faith no matter what happens, no matter how hard it gets. No matter the threats against us, or family, or friends, or nation, or whatever, Lord, may we stand strong because we know there's a future. And remind us of that future, Lord. And we need to invest in and make a difference in. So, Lord, this holiday season, this time with our family and friends, I pray you bless it. And may we be encouraging at one another to glorify you in all things. I pray in Jesus' name. Well, God bless, folks. Thanks for coming to be a part of the service today. And see you Wednesday or something. God bless.
I'm so sad.
Yes, she did.